One other thing that can affect testosterone is vitamin D,
Yeah,
and
which is what we're
that's
not
quite
getting right
important.
now.
We're not getting. We got, you got it. That's a simple blood test, but in actual fact, probably I think the government are actually recommending to support it with for COVID. It helps reduce the severity of it or hospital admissions. So, most people have a vitamin D deficiency, especially if you have a darker skin, you're more likely to. But we're in lockdown, we're not going outside as much,
Yeah,
and we're in winter.
and we're in winter.
Just
Yeah,
check you can supplement that and just take it. My name is Daniel. I am a functional medicine nutritionist. So how I got started into, I guess, this career was I finished university in doing you fall out of school and you think, what do I have to do? I have to go to university and get wasted for 3 years. So I went and I did a course I probably wasn't even that interested in, criminology and law. And I fell out of that and I ended up in the drug addiction service. It was either criminal justice work, police officer, or and I wasn't interested in any of that. So I fell into the drug addiction sector and I actually took to it quite well. More about the one-to-one work. I had my reservations about how it was structured, but I won't go into all of that now. It's not the point of it. But I fell into the drug addiction center, and over time I started to see how people coming into the service were really poorly nourished. And I was just thinking, well, surely their nutritional state has got to have something to do with how they are, how what's keeping them in the addictive cycle.
Yeah.
Yes, sure, there might be triggers and what made them get into it in the first place. But what about if we started changing some of the, looking at their diet? So I spoke to the service manager and we started agreeing, putting on a healthy meal. And, long story short, we started to see a change in people over time, whether it was even just getting them to drink water and or even eating whatever it was. I had no idea about nutrition, but that kind of fueled me into looking into a bit more. So I went to study nutritional therapy at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, and that was probably one of the hardest things that I've done. And that was in 2012. And since then, I've been working as a functional medicine nutritionist, and I've also since completed the Institute for Functional Medicine certification. So there's only about 50 people in the UK with that. So if you're not actually familiar with what functional medicine is, it looks to find the root cause of a health issue. So people may go to a nutritionist for things like weight loss, fine. And that's pretty standard, eat less or how you're eating less. But some people may go to a nutritionist for support with digestive issues, skin health, or a chronic disease.
Yeah.
And it's about working with mainstream medical healthcare, not against it. So but ultimately it's about looking at the source of the issue. So say if you come to me for eczema, there's, me just giving you some, creams or vitamin E or whatever it is not going to do anything to actually find out what the root cause of the eczema is. It could be digestive issue, it could be allergies. These are all examples. No two people with the same symptoms, no two people will have the same cause of what's going on. So it's taking into account the whole person. So I've been working with that model for quite a number of years, and I've worked in various areas of it. At the moment, I'm obviously, due to the pandemic, I'm working everything virtually, but just before that I was working on Harley Street. But yeah, it's been pretty rewarding, and I enjoy the work I do because you make a difference, and that's ultimately what you really want to do if you're obviously interested in a caring therapy as such. And recently I've started to tailor off into a slight niche. I'm not completely putting all my eggs in one basket with this, but I noticed the need for support in the LGBTQ plus community. So, and I've actually started to I've written a book on the area, and I see how it's the kind of area of nutrition that isn't really catered towards that community. So, for example, in those areas, there might be someone wanting support when they're transitioning, if they're a transgender, HIV support. There's also, targeted mental health support. There's a lot of addiction in the area. Plus, LGBTQ people might use different types of drugs than the heterosexual people, and or even, we might go a bit further into looking at, anabolic steroids and things that are quite taboo subjects that I want to kind of uncover and be like, actually, it's okay to talk about all of this.
Yeah.
And here's the information, because you just hear people out. Like, I've been at parties before and I've heard people just making stuff up, like how to recover from come downs or whatever it is. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. And or they're all on like 5-HTP because it's like the wonder drug after going out and having a huge 48-hour bender. I mean, my philosophy is fine, do what you want to do, but let's just try and do it in a way that you'll do it a little bit more safely, a harm reductive approach, and it's that's how can you recover from it afterwards. So that's I put all that together in a book, so it's currently being edited. So
I'd like to read that. It's fascinating how you got into it. There's so many different things there, so many different trigger points that I want to talk about. I don't know where to start. There's so many different things. Let's say, when you said plus, is that plus size, overweight?
No, it's the acronym. Sorry, it's the.
I'm terrible with this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the acronym, in order to be inclusive. So
okay.
A lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and plus is like anyone else in terms of, the community.
Okay.
So people that identify as non-binary or else. So and it's interesting that I was quite ignorant to think that everyone knows that acronym.
Yeah.
And it's changed throughout the years in terms of, it was LGBT, GT, or it was a few different and it's tried to find one now that most people can identify with. So
plus is a great idea. Otherwise we'd have had about 7 or 8 letters, wouldn't we? It would have got too many. It would have been too hard to say.
Well, there's also an IA.
Okay.
So asexual. So, but I think the plus and I think while writing the book, I think I'd use most of the word limit if I kept writing it all out.
Yeah.
So plus is a little bit easier. And I think probably the publisher would come back to me and say, actually, you need to do X, Y, and Z to make it a bit more inclusive. That was my fear writing the book, actually. Like, am I being completely, politically correct in writing this every sentence? So, because I'm going to be pulled up if it's wrong.
It's something that I worry about all the time. Like my community always say, don't worry, like just kind of speak the truth. But it's something that I am aware of. And I think there has to be a respect element. For each individual, you have to respect everybody's preferences. So I think that's why having you on and talking about these things and seeing that there's a plus that's been added that I didn't know, and I was ignorant to that, now I know. I think that's massively important. One of the big reasons why I wanted to get you on was to discuss steroids in the gay community. Because I remember when I was in Toronto, we discussed, didn't we, that I lived with that girl and we lived in what was called, I think, the gay village. And every single guy there was jacked. Every single guy had gigantic muscles. There was about 7 gyms on every street corner, and everybody was talking about steroids. You could see there were like visible signs of people using steroids. I know it's something that you are very familiar with, and it's a subject that you like to talk about. Where do you think that's headed? And I've heard from a lot of people in the fitness industry, personal trainers that have trained gay guys, that say that steroids is a real problem in the gay community.
Well, the thing is, in the gay community, it's just like talk of steroids is like, have you had a coffee this morning?
Okay, yeah.
It's
That's what I've
so
heard, yeah.
common. But like, the reason is, there's so many reasons why, and you could go into like, you know, into what if it's, body dysmorphic disorder or low self-esteem or to appear more attractive. I mean, we have all these magazines pushing the idea of, the perfect look. And you go to, say, I guess it's more prevalent in London, but you might go to a gym in London and, people have amazing bodies, and there's always that quip that, or that someone's got to be taking something in order to look that way. And even like people joke and say, I'm just taking a bit of Anavar, or which is like a milder steroid than, or if someone's a bit angry, oh, he's got train rage. It's become or lay off the train girl. That's kind of like become a bit of a sentence, more like, as in, and I think the problem I see in the gay community is that people are taking them uneducated.
That's the problem.
They're taking them without any form of like training behind them, which basically will mean that they're going to build the muscle and then lose it again if they stop training. But stop taking it. And the other thing is they're just not coming off a cycle. So a cycle normally is about 8 to 12 weeks long. And then afterwards, they have this inbuilt like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Do I come off and do post-cycle therapy, or do I just cruise on a bit of testosterone? Oh no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep taking. And, they might take a break for a month, but, the body is just never. And I've known people to be taking a cycle and they might be 40 years old and they're like, I've never come off.
Oh, how many years is that?
I know, and you just think, what's the state of your health inside? Are you getting health checks from this? So, and I remember even when I was working as a drug addiction counselor, I had this young gay guy come into the service, and he was asking for the needle exchange. And yeah, great, he was coming into a drug service to get the actual proper needles and the equipment. And there's some pharmacies that will give it out to you. But you have to take them into a room and ask them these like usual questions. And he said he's never been to the gym before. He said he feels that he needs to take steroids to.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he's never been to the gym, but he's taken steroids all his life.
No, he wants to start doing steroids.
Yeah,
to be more attractive.
Yeah.
And he was adamant that he had to take steroids. And I was like, well, why don't you just start training in the gym and see how things go? And he was like, nope. My friends told me to come and told me the steroids to get. And I couldn't refuse the service to him. It's not what they were about, but you have to just tell them exactly how to do things, how to pull with one needle, inject with the other, make sure it's clean and sanitary, blah blah blah. But people came in and it was all about aesthetics and you'll do like a steroid cycle. So typically you would get ready for summer.
Yeah.
It was like, I want to get ready for the parties in Mykonos or parties in Barcelona, or it was never about like, I want to get bigger to like, hit my personal best. It was never about that. So now it's all about, the Instagram
very short term.
And,
yeah.
But they don't really care about the side effects. They didn't really know what was in the steroids. They didn't know what they were putting in the body. They didn't care that, like the actual quality of the steroids they were getting. It was just like, oh, the dealer gave me this.
It's better than what I've got right now. Yeah,
exactly. So, and there were people saying to me like, I've got this huge like abscess coming up or a pain. I get pain every time I inject. I'm like, have you checked the brand? What dose is it? And what's the oil they're mixing it with? And things like, how are you injecting? So, it's just about, this is always going to happen. It's not going to change. You're not suddenly going to be like, stop doing steroids, because no one will listen to you. Because also that steroids also, they are synthetic versions of the hormone testosterone, but they also drive your dopamine response. And they make you feel that, this is great what I'm doing. is going to achieve an award from doing this. So, of course, you're stuck in that, cycle, literally. So,
Of course, I know myself when I buy a creatine and mass gainer, it doesn't have like a steroid like effect, but straight away I want to train. Like as soon as it arrives, I think, "Oh, I can spare an hour and I'll go into the gym and I'll do an hour." And you're like, that came from buying that stuff. So I imagine steroids is like a 10x on that, where you think I better train like crazy and get the best possible results. But I look at Hollywood and I think you'd be silly to not know that actors are doing like 6 months of steroids before a film. What do you think about that? Do you think it's the worst thing in the world to do a one-off controlled cycle, just to give yourself maybe, because the result, I know there's half-life, but the results do stay. And I've considered it myself. Like I've built up a good foundation, fitness foundation, and I've actually done a video on this in the past, that I don't think 6 to 10 week cycle is the worst thing in the world if you can just take time off, dedicate, and just do nothing but fitness, maybe with a personal trainer or something, and get to the best shape you've ever been, and then, do your 5-week recovery from half-life or something, and then never do it again.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they are quite addictive. Like once you first, it's like how you said about, when something arrives and, you think, I'm going to go and have a pump in the gym. It's the ritual of it all. So all combined, and then you see your body looks the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Are you able to do that one-off cycle? Like, probably there are, it's all down to really genetics at the end of the day. Like there are people that will be able to, put their body under a lot of strain in terms of training, diet, steroids, and be able to come out completely fine from it. It's hard to say, I'm going to give a very politician answer here because, yes is where I want to agree with you here. But it all, of course, depends. And, if you, let's look at it as if you are going to do that. What are you going to do? You're going to have bloods done, first of all, to make sure that, everything's all okay on the inside. And you can either get that done with your doctor, but there are plenty of cheap tests out there just to have a look at your liver function, your kidney function. Now, the reason why your question is quite complex to answer is because what is the cycle? And is it just testosterone itself? In which case, I'm a firm believer that testosterone replacement therapy, especially as we age, can be very beneficial to us. And so, men traditionally have a drop in natural testosterone levels as we age. So perhaps this can benefit. In that case, it's, a lot of clinics, private clinics with doctors do testosterone therapy. There are testosterone precursors in some steroids and some also related compounds in steroids. So you might hear of some people doing a stack where they might do something like testosterone, anavar, and trenbolone, for example. And trenbolone is quite a powerful steroid. So the next thing you've got to consider is how am I a complete asshole on steroids?
I think I would be. Yeah.
Is it going to ruin my job, family, relationships, whatever it is? Is it worth looking great for 12 weeks for that? The side effects that actually typically come from steroids, are they worth, are they worth it? You might be more prone to depression, push your mental health. You might, there might be more skin issues. You might be more susceptible to male pattern baldness.
Too late, the matter.
Well, exactly.
Might as well get on them.
Some people think, right, steroids are going to make me this horny beast, but in actual fact, they might completely change your sex drive, and you might not be horny at all. You might have erectile dysfunction. Your fertility changes. So it's like, and of course, your balls shrink as well. So because your natural testosterone just goes, right, we don't need to produce anything. Produce this now. So. And it's about how you're going to do. So the one point I would probably say, right, okay, give the cycle a go, is when you've exhausted the natural mechanisms. So train first, eat well. And if you get to the point where you're plateauing and you then are considering it, then, it's hard for me to say, go and do it. but
Yeah.
that's probably the safest way of doing it without having, and it's then having like then thinking that they are a magic bullet. You have to put the work in the gym, you have to train out, and also when you're on steroids, you're not going to suddenly wake up the next morning with loads of muscle. It doesn't work like that. So you have to be able to clear your schedule, like you said, take time off, train hard, eat sufficient amounts, and I mean eat well, like 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, and and making sure you're eating carbs, not being afraid of carbs. I've had people before on a low carb diet on a bulking cycle, and I'm like, what are you doing,
Not
mate?
gonna work. Yeah.
And truth be told, there's not huge amounts of scientific research around how to use, what to use, how long to come off, because so it is a bit of a guessing science. And you see people going onto these like bro science forums, and they're talking about how to inject or whatever it is. That's available, but and
it's available, but
yeah, but you can get information on how to inject. That's quite important. That's and then it's always about not overdoing it. Your androgen receptors, so what actually takes up and uses the actual testosterone, will only take in so much. So it's really to really like be quite blunt with you about it. If you're going to think about doing that, that's when I would say tick off those before. Are you training hard? Are you eating well? Right. Okay. Then test your blood status, what's going on, and then get an idea of any symptoms in the body. Sort all that before you consider going.
Yeah, because I still think I've got, probably because I haven't been training long. I was late to training because I was doing professional football for a little while. Not for long. I got injured very early on, and it kept me very skinny. So I only really started training properly at like 25, and I'm 28 now. So I think I've got probably another 4 or 5 natural years to go. And I might, genetically I'm pretty good, so I think I might not even need steroids. So, but you look at people like Dan Bilzerian, where he made the money and then he hired a personal trainer, went on steroids for like 3 months, 6 months, took all that time off, and that's all he did, trained twice a day. And then he gets the perfect body and then gets off them.
Well, that's the thing, is like they can, he's able to train twice a day. That is his brand. He doesn't have to think about work, his kids, or, family life, or he doesn't really he probably has a service delivering his meals to its exact macros.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So in terms of stress, it's like, I just need to look good. He doesn't need to think about earning to pay the rent because he's, rich enough.
Well, no, I don't know, actually. He got found out recently, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, maybe his money is coming from his dad's trust funds. They said he doesn't actually, somebody's fronting everything that he's doing, apparently. I think he faked a lot of what he did. He's obviously still wealthy to some extent, but I don't think it's to the extent that we all believed. But still, he's had a good life.
And you've also got to check out the legs on these guys.
Yeah.
A lot of them are in skinny jeans, and they're just training the top half, and the proof is in the pudding when they get the shorts on. So
I spoke about this the other day on an episode on one of the discussions I do on YouTube. I was saying that men need to start training glutes because it's just something we disregard. We've started training legs; it's getting better, but glutes, we're just not doing the type of training that we should be doing.
No, it's a lot of machine like legs you're using in the gym. I go to a pretty standard London gym box, and there are people.
Which one did you used to go to?
Covent Garden initially, but Elephant Castle now. It's a bit of a better setup.
I went to one in Stratford and a couple of times in Farringdon. They are the best, I think, actually.
I mean, they have all the equipment, and you see a lot more CrossFitters doing the kind of squats now. But there's a cable machine and the chest press, and they're all that people always opt to do a chest day and a leg day, and you've got to get in because leg day does the whole body.
Yeah, definitely. So let's say on the diet front, if somebody comes to you, they're out of shape, what's the first kind of step that you take, or what's the progression that you'll do with them? How will you, I guess first of all, you've got to train their body to actually burn fat, not store it, etc. But what would be the first steps that you would take?
If they were going to be on cycle, or...
No, sorry, just step back to just normal diet, because I imagine most people watching this aren't on steroids. That was more of a question for me. I love the subject.
Right. Okay. So first of all, I just look at their lifestyle and I just say, look, are you prepared to do a full program, or is your lifestyle completely chaotic? Or
Oh, I think I've lost you.
one of those people
Sorry. I lost you for about 10 seconds. I've got two Wi-Fis and for some reason it flicked between the other one. If just go back about 20 seconds, that'll be fine. I might leave it in, I might edit it.
Yes. So what I was saying is, first of all, I just start to ask them about their life and their lifestyle. And sometimes they'll say to me that they've tried all of diets and nothing's worked. And they try something on, they start a diet on Monday, they give up by Thursday, and then they end that cycle of like, I'm starting again on Monday. For those people, I tend to say, look, just pick two things that you know that you can actually fully achieve, because I want the mental mindset of like, yes, I've achieved that. And then we can build that into a program eventually. So even if it is for like someone who's got zero time, if it's like, look, make sure you're drinking 3 liters of water a day, or, don't have just a piece of toast for breakfast, have, some eggs or a smoothie, whatever it is. But ultimately I try to get them to eat. It's very, very simple how to eat, in terms of how they should eat, but it's about keeping their mindset around it. So, keeping protein high, half the plate above ground veg, so your green veg, and then a quarter of your plate if you need carbs. Some people prefer a low carb approach. It's entirely different depending on the person, their lifestyle, weight. Like you said as well, you've got to get the person in a fat burning zone. You've got to get them doing some resistance training, ideally. I'm not massive fan of high intensity training. I think it pushes the stress hormones a bit too much.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
I think the stress hormone cortisol, especially if you're people will be doing things like certain boot camps and then they go straight into like a full day's busy work and they drinking coffee all day. It's not necessarily the best for that. There are time and places for that. Not when the cortisol's high though. And so they're really the kind of foundations of what I would suggest a diet is. There are of course specialized diets depending on certain needs, and digestive issues and things like that. So you really have to then tailor it towards the individual, but try and get the sugar down as much as possible. It's, simple things. Probably in my time as a nutritionist, you can be very, think about very glamorous ways of individualizing a diet, but ultimately it comes down to the basics. Unprocessed food, keep processed food out. Look at labels. I mean, things like a breakfast biscuit has more sugar in than a shortbread biscuit. So these are simple things. Like look at something that's carbohydrate of which is sugars per 100 grams. If it's under 10 grams, then it's generally okay. So that's quite looking at labels, educate yourself a bit more, and try not to push too much in. If you're not sure about nutrition and you don't know much about it, keep it very simple. Don't be thinking that you need to be intermittent fasting or paleo diet or keto, or these things have a place, but
I agree. I think people overthink things. Like I'm vegan, and people say, "How on earth do you bulk? You don't get enough B12. How are you getting your protein?" It's like it's just as easy as doing it when I was on meat. Like I've done a video recently. I'm going to put it out soon. And I looked at the meals that I was eating, and I was like, "There's no real difference. It's just like there's different things on the plate, but there's still the same portions. It's no different than when I was bulking when I was eating meat. It's very, very similar."
How do you deal with vegan protein shakes? Because I've yet to find one that's not mud.
My friend gave me one a few months back, which was pretty good. And then I ran out of that, and instead of asking him again, I went and got a mass gainer because I was like, let's just fucking go for it. Let's get as big as possible. And I got one from. I'll send it to you afterwards, but I've got a decent one. It's about 4 or 5 kilogram tub. I've gone through 2 of them already, and the vanilla wasn't the best, but the strawberry is delicious. Absolutely delicious. But I don't 100% trust a lot of these companies that the products are completely vegans. And one day I will make my own, but they seem to
Yeah,
be
I think
working.
it's a huge, either it's like extortionatly expensive for like 100 gram
Yeah.
pouch of whatever it is, or it tastes like mud and like sticks at the bottom of the protein shake. So
Yeah, it does do that.
um
Yeah. You got
yeah,
stirred twice.
yeah, exactly. So I have issues with whey protein. If I have it, I have really bad digestion and I get
Yep.
bad skin. So I'm always trying different protein shakes, and I think there's definitely, this still hasn't been quite like got there on the money yet. So
My aim long term is to get off all of that stuff though. Like I do it to get bigger because I think if you eat all of it, my trick is eat as much as you can throughout the day to get to your calorie kind of limit where your body is like, if I eat another thing, I'm going to throw up. And then you have your protein shake or your mass gainer because, it's liquid based. It tastes sugary. It's almost like a milkshake, isn't it? So it's a lot easier to get that
yeah.
down and then it boosts you by another 500-600 calories. And there we go.
Well,
You
this
made
is
your
it.
target.
And when you're on that subject, people, if they're bulking, people need to be in a calorie surplus, and
Yeah.
not the time people aren't eating enough, or eating like they're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner in a snack or something, and you need to eat more, and you need to do somewhat plan your meals, to give you that extra point. But and I think dirty bulking is quite a popular thing to do.
Yeah, I
think.
actually see it as counterintuitive. I never used to, but I once worked with a guy who was he was a doctor of something, I can't remember, but he was a really, really smart guy. And I was explaining to him that I didn't know whether to do a dirty bulk or a clean bulk. And he said, well, in itself, it's flawed. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, at some point, you're going to have to cut that fat anyway. He said, so you should just do a clean one, but go slower. He was like, because you're going to get the same results, but you're going to have less fluff. Like you're not going to have to do bulk cut, bulk cut, bulk cut, which is something I promote quite a lot. I use the term fat guys with no shame because I think that I've said multiple times, like I've seen maybe 50 cases where a guy has gone from being overweight to ignoring the cardio side of things, sticking to a good clean diet, lifting heavy weights, and then having the best of both worlds. Like they're the only guys that can, not actually, but theoretically, they're the only guys who can build muscle and cut fat at the same time. And it's something that I massively, massively promote. Otherwise, for guys like me who are skinny growing up, we're bulking, we're cutting, we're bulking, we're cutting, we're bulking, we're cutting. And if anything, I found that maybe just do a 3-year bulk, a clean one, take a lot longer, and have a calorie surplus of about 100, if that. And just do it over a longer period of time. And then that way you somewhat retain your 6-pack by the time you get up to the weight that you want to be at.
Well, this is it. And I think it's easier to dirty bulk because you gain the weight, but you don't think, and you can eat nice things. And if you want to do that, like do it after leg day. If you want to eat like a cheeseburger, something that's leg day, do it after back day. The big muscles, they can use a lot of energy up. So they'll take all that nutrition in. So if there's, any in that, but yeah. So
where do you stand on testosterone? Where do you as the catalyst? Do you think muscle can be built without it? Do you think that should be everybody's main platform as a man? Do you think iodine, testosterone, looking into the kind of the foundational stuff that men need in place before they can go to the gym?
Well, this is funny, like it's a bit of a circular pattern because the gym also helps make testosterone. So if you don't have any so if you don't have any testosterone, then just get to the gym and start lifting weights and eating well and sleep better. There's a lot. It probably will, in a young guy I'm talking about, probably will come quite quickly. But as we get older, it can be a bit hard. And you've got to think about your stress hormones, what's going on there. Are you sleeping well? I use an Aura ring. I don't know if you can see it here, but I track my sleep at night with that. And that tells me how much deep sleep I'm getting and how much REM sleep. Are you eating enough? I think there's a lot of factors. Testosterone is important. And there are, I think every person who's even concerned about testosterone, and I think if you are having symptoms of low testosterone, such as low mood, get fat changes, the maybe having man boobs or, things like that. I would think about, maybe it's time to actually get that tested. Testosterone itself is a bit useless to just test alone. You want to look at the free testosterone and plus this sex hormone binding globulin, which basically gobbles up available testosterone. So, but to answer your question, just get in the gym and start doing something, because even if it only increases by 0.5 or whatever by doing that, it's better than before.
The gym.
Yeah.
I've gone all the way down to fluoride-free toothpaste, filter in the water. Yeah, I'm really, really keen on it. I'm doing a documentary on it soon for the streaming platform when that all comes together, because men's testosterone levels are reported to be, I think, a third of what our granddads were at the same age. Yeah. And I just think, where's that headed? That's going to fall further and further and further.
Well, we've got to think about, there's so many different factors that can impact it. Unfortunately, the world we live in is, it's in the food we eat. Is it the food quality? That's full of artificial hormones, and in the US, especially antibiotics. Is the water we have, the metal, if there's heavy metals in it, if there's what else do we think? The pollution, and the amount of plastic we're using, which has contained something called bisphenol A, BPA. So you might find things that are BPA free, and that is just, it mimics, has hormone mimicry. So it it can also impact testosterone and estrogen. Sometimes it's about the level of estrogen compared to testosterone, and estrogen could be just high. So you've got to think about these different things, and filter your water if you do what you can. But do what you can. I mean, what I mean by that is what you actually are going to continue doing, not just like a quick,
not as a one-off.
And it won't take, some things will take a bit longer. Most of the time, it's about a lot of stress in the world. That's why.
Which actually ties into your high intensity training, because me and my dad had this discussion the other day. We both played football all our lives, and he's actually got stage 4 cancer at the moment, and he's fighting that. And he said he stayed fit all his life. He's eaten pretty well. He's drank a few beers here and there, but he's lived a very clean life. And even with the cancer, he's still in pretty good shape, and he's like in his mid to late 50s. And he said that playing football all his life, he doesn't reckon helped. And that's a theory that I had as well. I said, well, the human body shouldn't be sprinting around for 90 minutes 2 or 3 times a week, and then that cortisol spikes and it produces more estrogen, and you get increase in DHT to compensate. And those sort of things have been linked to hormonal imbalances, prostate cancers, etc. And ever since I kind of quit playing football and just did heavy weights, I feel so much better in myself, so much more energy. I don't get ill as often. When I was playing football, I just felt drawn out all the time. My energy was low. It just wasn't very nice.
When you were a professional footballer,
well, I mean, there's a caveat to that. I don't want to make out I was Ronaldo, but I was playing for Forest Green. I don't want to be a fraud. I was playing for Forest Green Rovers, and I managed to get into the first team and train with them, and I was about to sign a contract, and I got some major injuries to my calves that cramped. It's something to do with my bones being too big for my muscles at the time. It was something weird, and I kept cramping up, and they gave it a year and rehabilitation, and that, I didn't really recover. So I mean, I was there long enough to have a cup of tea, and that's probably about it. But go on. I just wanted to.
No, I was going to say, I've worked with some footballers before, and the amount of training they're doing, but the diet is horrific.
I'd agree.
Like a team lunch. There's not it's not that specialized even at the top level. And they might have blood tests twice a year, and I'm like, no, that's not good enough. And one other thing that can affect testosterone is vitamin D. And
which is what we're not getting important right now.
We're not getting. That's a simple blood test, but in actual fact, probably I think the government are actually recommending to support it with for COVID. It helps reduce the severity of it or hospital admissions. So, most people have a vitamin D deficiency, especially if you have a darker skin, you're more likely to, but we're in lockdown, we're not going outside as much.
Yeah.
And we're in winter. check that you can supplement that and just take it, you know.
What sort of symptoms are people facing from COVID? Like, how is that affecting people, do you think? Or what long-term effects are we going to get from this? Like, I just want to get your kind of viewpoint on what will be the long-term implications of what we're seeing now. I think we're seeing short-term because this is second lockdown, and we're seeing depression and, you know, people aren't, like I said to you at the start, I'm lucky I've got a gym because first lockdown I lost a lot of muscle. But what do you think is going to happen if this continues maybe for another 6 months, maybe a year?
Well, I think people, I was talking to a psychotherapist the other day, and he said that the initial lockdown was the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
So you deal with it. But now he said people are queuing at his door for him to work with him because there's something called a surge capacity. So where the stress response can no longer operate in its normal way.
Yeah.
And this is a completely unprecedented pandemic. We haven't faced this in our lifetime. So we don't really know what to do. Plus the economy, and you think, you know, jobs, people are dying, you know, and you know, people don't really have purpose. So I think the biggest thing is going to be the mental health side of things from this, not knowing, I think, and especially with men, I think now it's a bit different where men are starting to now reach out and talk.
Yep.
But I think with men compared to women are a lot, you know, men may not keep their mental health issues, struggles to themselves a lot more, or go and practice a behavior. But you might see more addiction. You might see, you know, like depression. I don't know. They haven't even mentioned about, I think even Theresa May mentioned in the Commons a couple of weeks ago that the impact of the pandemic they haven't released suicide rates. They haven't released mental health admissions and things like that. So I think that is only going to be the beginning, because we're still only, and especially with like things like furlough that's going on until March in the UK. So, you know, after March, what's going to happen? Because companies are like, right, fine, the government can pay your wages. And then in March, it's like chop, chop, chop time. Then you're going to have to see the impact. So I think we just, at the moment, with the UK is running into the fire without thinking about the consequences. But I think it's going to be a lot on mental health, and which, you know, case it's, you know, you've got to be doing something now to be able to give yourself some purpose, even if it is training, start doing it, giving yourself some routine. If it's not training, think about something that you do enjoy. Like, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend, and they cut the gyms out. And I'm self-employed, so I just carry on doing what I'm doing, and I have a few things I do on the side. But some people, the work, gym, home is their routine. That's all they ever had.
Yes,
so,
I actually spoke about this on a video yesterday. I'm going to be releasing it soon. I said that COVID has exposed men's lives for what they really are. And a lot of guys just go 9-to-5 job, get drunk on weekends, 9-to-5 job, get drunk on weekends, with maybe a sprinkling of the gym in there. So you take away those three elements and they're like, I don't actually have a life. I think it's exposed how many people don't have a purpose outside of those three things.
It makes you realize that we're not actually we're not that important in the terms of the history timeline, you know, and it's that itself is like, wow, I could just, you know, I'm a bit meaningless here, you know. So but there is ways of changing that. Find your purpose, find something that's different, and you will have down days, you will have up days. And it's like, you're not expected to go and suddenly become Deepak Chopra overnight, but it's just do something that's slightly different and think, well, and the biggest thing I find as well around, you know, is, I don't know if it probably will tie a bit in with this, with exploring new things, is imposter syndrome. And I'm a big fan of talking about that.
I've heard it a few times, yeah.
Well, it's what prevents you from really achieving or trying new things,
Joe Rogan mentioned it a couple of times on his podcast, I believe, where he said he feels like an imposter. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think it's like we all can be guilty of it. It's the feeling you get when you're not good enough, when you're either put on stage, or, you know, you've got to release a product to the world, or you're going to a job interview. Like, you feel that you don't deserve what you should be deserving. And I think addressing that will also help people out of the kind of lockdown mental health state a bit. So because people will need to push new opportunities, find new purpose or jobs or whatever it is, and reinvent.
So I'm very optimistic. I know I'm in a favorable position here. Like timing wise, it couldn't have been better. Like I was able to stay in, save as much money as possible, reinvest it, build a gym, build an office. It's actually benefited me, which I actually feel shameful saying because I know so many people are suffering. But at the same time, I actually see that off the back of this, the amount of opportunities are going to be enormous. And I think so many people need to start planning for that rather than worrying about the implications of what's happening right now. I think there's so many opportunities that will come off the back of this. Like so many, in a sad sense, I think so many businesses will close down, a lot of smaller ones, but that will give an opportunity for new ones to rise up. And I think we might be better after this. One thing I know for certain is if this does fade in the next 3 to 4 months, this summer might be the biggest piss up in human history.
Seriously, festivals, exactly.
Everybody's going to do steroids. Everybody's going to be out partying.
Exactly.
We're all going to have spare money. Well, you'd hope, but.
Well, that's the thing. Just start. And this is one thing about comparing, that person in lockdown who's, suddenly doing all this new stuff, and you're sat there going, I don't have the motivation yet. That's okay. Be a bit kinder to yourself. You'll get over it. It will always be all right in the end, So, and try not to think your thoughts are always fact. That was one of the best things.
Nice quote.
To, you don't believe everything you think. It's one of the best things that someone ever said to me. Because all these panic, all these thoughts, I'm like, hang on, you're just feeling that because of X, Y, Z, or just chill.
Yeah,
move on.
That's a very nice way to put it. At the start, you mentioned about skin, anxiety, stress, all linked to diet. I find that fascinating. Obviously, skin is because you are what you eat, but all the anxiety and stuff, I've heard that before, that based on the foods that you eat, it can make you more nervous. You can have lower confidence. That fascinates me. How does that work?
Well, anxiety is quite a big subject. I guess it's linked to a bit of stress. Obviously, there are things, anxiety is a part of your stress response. In simple terms, it's like you have too many, chemical messengers in the body at one point. It makes you feel a bit overwhelmed, and then you can't break them down quick enough. So that might lead to feelings of panic, nervousness. And some people are prone to anxiety in terms of they have a genetic predisposition for it. So these people might be those that have a cup of coffee and it sends them off and panicking, sweat, all a very nervous person. But there are, foods that can impact anxiety. It's about looking at your blood sugar, the amount of sugar in your blood at one time. And this really and truly, is if your blood sugar is balanced, you're maybe if your blood sugar is not balanced, you might be more prone to anxiety and feelings of being overwhelmed. So I would say to, look at your stress, look at what's in your diet. Are you tolerant to caffeine? Maybe not. Or are you having too much caffeine? Are you doing anything? Is alcohol impacting your anxiety? It can impact GABA and glutamate in the brain. So these neurochemical messengers. So think about that. But there are, maybe it's, then look at your diet, but there might be some nutrition that can help in terms of magnesium glycinate. That might be really helpful for you. To increase that in the diet, or maybe even need that in a supplement. So there are many different things that you need to consider for the anxiety. There's a whole link between gut bacteria and how we feel. So it's about it's very hard to give specific generalized protocol on this, but it's, you can pick out a few things. So also if we
go on, sorry, no, go ahead. It's all about you, this podcast.
No, I was just saying, if you're taking steroids, like if you're in the gym and you're taking things, perhaps it might be your pre-workout causing your anxiety. It might be steroids. You might be taking having some taking drugs at the weekend, and that might make you anxious in the week. Think about your lifestyle. Think about what possible triggers. Just be curious.
That makes sense. Yeah. You think people drink on the weekend and then have a bad Wednesday? Kind of adds up, isn't it?
Well, just sit with the body and think, well, can I explain this anxiety in any way? Am I anxious? Sometimes it's just that, you're packing some mental thought away, and you to the point where you're just not completely conscious of it. And you're like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm really anxious because I was doing coke all weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
or, and just try and do things to just be a bit kinder to yourself in a way, chill out a bit. I like stress adaptogens as well. I think they're really quite nice, like ashwagandha.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite supplements. Things like they usually come in a complex with like rhodiola, ginseng. Those are very nice,
and they're in my new supplement.
Good for like. Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they are.
Good for testosterone production.
I'll have to get you back on for the marketing.
Exactly.
No, they're great ingredients. That's the thing. I took all those things for years. I took all those things for like 5-6 years, and I realized that just within myself, my skin, my energy, I was less anxious. My depression would go away. And then when I couldn't, because they're quite expensive, and there were times where I couldn't afford them, and I noticed the difference immediately. They're fantastic things. Tomcat Alley is probably one of my favorites. I think for testosterone and just overall benefits to the male body, I think that's my favorite.
No, there's definitely, it's with supplements. Supplement is designed to support a healty diet, and it's about how clean are the supplements you're taking. The dose of it, like, I always say that going to say a standard supermarket and getting a multivitamin is a bit useless. You're not going to get the good forms. You're not going to get the amount you actually really need. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more to it. So
are you very, from what I've gathered, you're very much of the ilk that people should have personalized diets. Like each person is different. There's individual things that might be affecting you that wouldn't affect me, etc. Because I've got friends that can drink beer 7 nights a week and still have an 8-pack. Whereas if I drink one, I'm depressed for a week.
Well, it's, they might have an 8-pack, but what's going on inside for them?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You can be quite slender with type 2 diabetes. Ideally personalized diet, right? But we're not talking about, I'm not saying everyone needs to come and get a nutritionist here, because that can cost. And if you're, you can start by making, like, even like I said at the beginning, keep it very, very simple. Am I eating too much crap? Is my diet in line with, kind of the good foundations, right? Do I need a personalized diet? What do I actually want to achieve with that personalized diet? Do I want to have that extra edge? Do I want to know what supplements are designed for me? Yeah, you might want to do a test to identify it. So it really is, you can have a TV that works, or you can have an ultra HD TV that's, 8K or whatever it is. It's the same thing with personalized diet. Yeah. So people might be more genetically engineered towards a, like being more leaner or being more bulkier. And, you can really identify a lot of things. Just a little bit on the, the genetic side of things. You can do a lot of genetic testing, but it's actually, how useful is that information for you, and how is it actually currently expressing itself in the body right now? So there's no point you doing a genetic test that tells you, like, you're good at sprinting. Well, I could tell you that straight away without, I can tell you that the client can tell you that if they can run or not.
Yeah.
But it's about how you're, more about genetics, about how you're processing vitamin, minerals, making these, making neurotransmitters, stress hormones, etc., and all of that, and risk of cardiovascular disease. So that's quite, the more important things. But just make sure you're not either reading too much into it in terms of fact, in terms of this is exactly what's going to happen, or just testing it with a blood test on the side. So keep it simple.
See, a lot of my guys, like, kind of the ethos of First Man is I promote kind of getting up in the morning, hitting the gym. Maybe you have a 9-to-5 job. When you come home, maybe you work on your business for 4 or 5 hours. Then you, let's say you go out and you date a woman or something. Then maybe you work on something else, like self-improvement, like you read a book, try and learn a language. Like, it is all areas of life at once, and trying to become like the perfect man for something that I call the male advantage around about 36, when men peak, in my opinion. In order to kind of sustain that energy level for a long period of time without getting ill, run down, or overly stressed, is there anything that people could do dietary?
Sustain energy. Dietary is, you've got to be making sure you're getting enough protein in the day. I don't think, even if you're not training, you still need to make sure you're eating enough protein. I would say at least a gram per kilo of body weight. So I think the standard guidelines are a bit less than that. But I would focus on making sure enough protein. I would say the same principles I would say just before is keep the sugar as low as possible. Complex carbohydrates. I know some people do well on not having low carbohydrate, but it depends on the person. And I think a lot of it is, I want to push into a bit more lifestyle as well with stress. I think stress is the biggest killer. You've got to address that. If you address it at 36, you'll be much healthier at 50.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think as men, we get a slow but lasting peak. And I think if you work on yourself when you're young, take care of your diet, really take care of your body, I think you can peak at I believe a man's life doesn't start until they're 30. And I believe you can have your first peak at kind of 36. And then that can last all the way until 50 if you take care of yourself.
Yeah. Just don't rush it. Like you said with the clean bulking, if you rush it, you'll have to then pay it back or work harder after. So that's how. And
another big element of that is skin. I think you got pretty good skin there, buddy. I think you're looking pretty good. So you know what you're talking about. So what would you recommend for having good skin? Like, what are maybe the 3 worst things that guys are doing? What are 3 things that you can do to improve your skin? Because it's something that I struggled with when I was younger. I know I had really high testosterone and I think increasing DHT, and I had acne all over my face. Luckily, it cleared up without scarring because I refused to pop it. I knew it would be a problem long term, so I just sat there and took the abuse. And
then it all so I was a popper, so I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was like, I think you're either a popper or you're not. That type of, I would look at things to support DHT. So things like saw palmetto, very good, and zinc. I would probably look at how support, if it's too much testosterone, I would probably look at also using something like broccoli sprout powder or broccoli sprouts. Yeah. You can buy broccoli sprouts from Waitrose or Health Store, and they help with the estrogen metabolism side of things. So that might help with the skin.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but if it's not just about like for that particular issue, I would probably use the more saw palmetto and zinc side of things to help slower the conversion of DHT.
Yeah.
I would probably, look at skin on itself is, first of all, what are you using on a day-to-day basis? Is it some basic brand that's drying your skin out or making it more oily? So consider what you're actually using, and is it natural, the better. Your skin is an organ too, and it will take in what you're using. Think about your alcohol intake, coffee intake, what's going to dry the skin out. You think about your gut bacteria that can express itself on the face, and then is there any of how well are you digesting your food? How are you breaking your food down? Is there impact in levels of beneficial bacteria? Are you sensitive to some foods? So you can be completely allergic, fine. People are allergic to dairy and gluten. You can also be sensitive to them. So, and it's about the proteins in the milk rather than the lactose. So, or the gluten as a protein. So might not be celiac, but you might be non-celiac, not gluten sensitive. So I would, if your skin is inflamed, it's your body trying to tell you something. And if it's not just about, like the hormones, then it's probably down to, try and eliminating 1 or 2 of these food groups and see if it works. So that's how I would start.
Sounds like good advice. I was just looking at the clock. I think we've gone over an hour, which is usually about optimal time for a podcast. And I don't know if you can see, but when I'm talking, there's actually the cold air coming out of my mouth.
All right, fair enough.
I don't know. You can see it sometimes. So I think the garage is getting a little bit cold now. Yeah.
No, it's cool. Thanks for having me. Anyway, it's really good.
That's okay.
Talk.
Honestly, it's fascinating. Some of that you'll have to come on again. I think, especially as this lockdown kind of stretches out and we get closer to summer, you'll have to come on. We'll talk about more things and, maybe what guys can do to get in shape for summer and stuff like that. Just, I think you got such a wide knowledge base, and especially when I do those documentaries on steroids in the gay community and stuff like that, it would be fantastic to have you on, and maybe we could present that together or do something with that.
Perfect. Sounds good. No, I think this stuff is not talked about. It's good that
Agreed.
It's able to even make an imprint. If it just makes someone think, okay, I'm going to do that, right, what do I need to consider? Again, we're not telling you not to do something, and we're not telling you to do it. It's about, if you're going to do it, you need to consider X, A, B, C, and D. Don't skip on it, and don't just think it's going to be the magic bullet to giving you the perfect cover body, because these cover body models, they have to go through so much before they're actually on the stage. It's like going on stage when you're doing a competition. So cool. Well, thanks again, and look forward to hearing the podcast when it comes out.
Yeah, it should be good. I should be able to get this out by today. I've got a lot of time, so it's still early. Usually I do these podcasts at 6 at night or whatever. There's a few Americans that came on as well, so you do them very late and then you're editing it till 1, 2 in the morning, so that can be a bit of a struggle. But I got the whole rest of today, so I should be able to get that out. Before I forget, one thing I want to do is I want to connect you with a guy called Mike. I can't remember his surname now. I know it begins with a K, but he came on one of my podcasts. It was part of a team. It was Mike and Sam. They were TRT experts. They run their own firm. And he came on, and he was all about the same sort of subjects as you. He knew about diet, he knew about testosterone, he knew about hormones, and he's gay. So I think it would be fantastic if you two could connect. I think there's so much that would cross paths there, and maybe we could all do, all of us could come on the podcast together. I think that would be fantastic. I nearly said all of us could have a 3-way podcast. I stopped myself.
Virtual 3-way.
I think I blew the odd one out, but you never know.
Fair enough. Well, you never know exactly. Too much testosterone, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. A lot of famous people have done that, haven't they? A lot of famous people, where they've slept with so many women, they're like, no, you know what? I'm going to try the other side of the coin. My dopamine's too low.
Exactly. Why not?
All right then, buddy.
Cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.